5:10, memorable Passover. 5:11, temple service reorganized. Chapter 31. Now when all this was finished, all Israel who were present went out to the cities of Judah and broke the images in pieces and cut down the leopard statues and demolished the shrines and the altars that were in Judah and Benjamin and in Ephraim and Manasseh, until they had utterly destroyed them all. Then the Israelites returned every man to his possession, and they entered in peace into their own cities. 2. And Hezekiah appointed the times of serving of the priests and the Levites according to their divisions, every man according to his service, the priests and the Levites for burnt offerings and for peace offerings, to minister and to give thanks and to praise in the gates of the temple of the Lord. 3. And the king gave his own substance. King gave of his own substance oxen for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings for the Sabbaths and for the new moons and for the set feasts, as it is written in the law of the Lord. 4. Moreover, he commanded the people who dwelt in Jerusalem to give the portion due to the priests and the Levites, that they might be encouraged in the law. 5. And as soon as the commandment was published in Israel, they brought the first fruits of grain, wine, oil, and of their cattle, and of the produce of the field, and the tithe of all things they brought in abundantly. 6. And the children of Israel and Judah who dwelt in the cities of Judah also brought in gifts and offered them to the Lord their God, and they brought in tithes upon tithes of grain, and of the cattle, and of the produce of the field. They brought the tithes and consecrated them in the Lord to the Lord their God. 7. In the 3rd month they began to lay the foundation of the tithe supplies, and in the 7th month Hezekiah took it and distributed among the priests and the Levites. 8. And when Hezekiah and the princes saw that the tithes of the priests were so abundant, they blessed the Lord and prayed for Israel. 9. Then Hezekiah prayed for the priests and for the Levites concerning the abundance of the tithe. 10. And he called for Azariah, the chief priest of the house of Zadok, and said to him, This tithe is ready for you to be eaten, because it has been brought into the house of the Lord. Now you can eat and be filled. And what is left, give it to the poor and to the fatherless. For the Lord has blessed his people and has given them this abundance. And what is left, give it to all the people of Israel. 11. Then Hezekiah commanded that storehouses be prepared in the house of the Lord, and they prepared them. 12. And they brought in the tithes and the dedicated things faithfully. Over them Conaniah the Levite was overseer, and Shimei his brother was the next. 13. And Nahiel, Uzziah, Nahath, Ashel, Jerimoth, Jozabah, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mattah, Benaiah, and Shemaiah his brother were overseers under the hand of Conaniah, at the command of Hezekiah the king, and Azariah the ruler of the house of the Lord. 14. 14. And Kariah the son of Imnah the Levite, the porter of the east gate, was over the freewill offerings of the Lord and over the most holy things. 15. And next to him were Eden, Benjamin, Yeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, Shechaniah, in the cities of the priests in their set office, to distribute portions to their brethren, to the great and small alike. 16. Besides that which is due to the males from 3 years old and upwards, even to everyone who entered into the house of the Lord, their daily portion for their service in their duties according to their divisions. 17. And oil and wine were given to the priests and the Levites according to the house of their fathers from 20 years old and upward, in their charges by their divisions. 18. And oil was given for their lanterns, to their wives, their sons and their daughters, and to all the congregation of Israel, for in their set office they sanctified themselves faithfully. 19. For the sons of Aaron the priest were holy, and their flesh holy. They never touched women. And they went about in every village and suburb, men whose names are well known, to give portions to all the males among the priests, and to all who were reckoned by genealogy among the Levites. 20. And thus did Hezekiah throughout all Judah, and he did that which was right, and which was good and right, and walked in truth before the Lord. 21. And in every work that he began to do in the house of the Lord, and in the law, and in the commandments, to seek his God, he did it with all his heart, and prospered. (32) After these things, and the faithful acts which Hezekiah did, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah and encamped against the fortified cities, and said to the inhabitants, Give me a pledge and come to me. And when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and his armies had come to fight against Jerusalem, 3, he took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to conceal the waters of the fountains which were outside the city, and they did help him. 4. So there was gathered a great multitude of people of Israel together, who concealed all the fountains and great brooks that ran through the midst of the land, saying, Lest the king of Assyria come and find much water. 5. They also strengthened themselves and built up one wall opposite the other, and polluted the canal which David had constructed. And Hezekiah made weapons, shields, and spears in abundance. 6. And he set captains of war over the people, each one over 10, and gathered them together to him in the marketplace of the city, and spoke to all of them, saying, 7. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid nor dismayed in the presence of the king of Assyria. 5:12. Sennacherib threatens king of Assyria, nor in the presence of all the armies that have come over with him, for there is more with us than with him. 5:13. Sennacherib defeated. 8. With him is an arm of flesh. With us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people were encouraged with the words of Hezekiah king of Judah. 9. After this, Sennacherib king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh together with his servants, and they came to Jerusalem, but he himself was besieging Lachish and all his commanders with him, to all the people of Judah that were in Jerusalem, saying, 10. Thus says Sennacherib king of Assyria, On whom are you trusting, that you remain in Jerusalem during the siege? 11. Hezekiah is deceiving you, that he may give you over to die by famine and by thirst. Moreover, he is misleading you, saying, The Lord our God shall deliver us out of the hands of the king of Assyria. 12. Has not the same Hezekiah removed his high places and altars, and commanded Judah and his inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, You shall worship before one altar and burn incense upon it. 13. Perhaps you know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of other lands, and the gods of nations whose lands were not able to deliver, whose lands, the nations of those lands were not able to deliver their lands out of my hand. 14. Who is there among all the gods of those nations that my fathers utterly destroyed, that was able to deliver his people out of my hand, that the Lord should be able to deliver you out of my hand? 15. Now therefore do not let Hezekiah deceive you, nor make you to trust in this, and do not believe him, for your God will not be able to deliver you out of my hand. For all the nations and kingdoms have not been able to deliver their cities out of my hand, and out of the hands of my fathers. Your God will not be able to deliver you out of my hand. 16. And his servant spoke those things before the Lord God of Israel, and in the presence of his servant Hezekiah. "17. And he wrote letters to revile the Lord God of Israel, and to speak to the people of Israel, saying, As the God of the nations of these lands were unable to deliver their cities out of my hand, so shall not the God of Hezekiah be able to deliver his city out of my hand." 18. Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jewish language, or Aramaic or Hebrew dialect spoken by the Jews, to the people who were seated on the wall of Jerusalem, to frighten them and to trouble them, that they might capture the wall of the city. 19. And they spoke in the name of the gods of the people of the earth, and also in the name of the God of Jerusalem, imploring him to reward them according to the work of their hands. 20. Then Hezekiah and Isaiah the son of Amos the prophet prayed because of this, and the Lord heard the voice of their prayer. 21. And the Lord sent an angel from before him, who smote all the mighty men of valor, and the kings and the princes who were in the camp of the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria returned in disgrace to his own land. And when he came into the house of his gods, his sons, who came forth of his loins, slew him there with the sword. 22. Thus the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hands of Sennacherib the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all those who invaded their borders. 23. And many of the children of Israel brought gifts to the Lord to Jerusalem, and gave presents to Hezekiah king of Judah, so that he was exalted before all nations. 24. In those days Hezekiah was sick to death, and he prayed before the Lord and said, Thou hast performed mighty miracles for me, and thou hast rewarded me according to the works of my hands. 25. And the sickness of Hezekiah was due to his pride of his heart. Therefore the wrath of the Lord came upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. 5:14. Manasseh's wickedness. 26. But Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord did not come upon them in the days of Hezekiah. 27. And Hezekiah had exceeding great wealth and honor, and he made for himself treasuries of silver and for gold, treasuries for silver and for gold, and for precious stones, and for spices, and for shields, and for all manner of pleasant vessels. 28. Storehouses also for the increase of grain, and wine and oil and stalls for all kinds of beasts. 29. And the folds for herds and for flocks and for oxen and other beasts. For the Lord had given him very much substance. 30. This same Hezekiah also buried the outlet of the waters of the upper spring and brought it straight down to the western cistern of the city of David. And Hezekiah prospered in all his works. 31. And he sought the law of the Lord as it was given in the land, and the Lord knew all that was in his heart. 32. Now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and his goodness and his excellent ways, behold, they are written in the prophecy of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, and in the book of Kings, the kings of Judah and Israel. 33. And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did him honor at his death, and they returned to Jerusalem, and Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. Chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to the works of the nations, which the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. 3. For he built again the altars which Hezekiah his father had broken down. And he built shrines for the idols, and made images of leopards, and worshipped them. 4. Moreover, he worshipped all the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. 5. And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of the Lord. 6. And he also caused his son to pass through the fire in the great valley, and he practiced augury and soothsaying and sorcery, and inquired of the Chaldeans and of familiar spirits, and he did much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. 7. And he set the image of the idol which had 4 faces, which he had made in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord had said to David and to Shalomo his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen for myself out of all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. 8. Neither will I any more remove the children of Israel from this land which I have given to their fathers, if only they will take heed to do all that I have commanded them, according to the whole law and my statutes and my ordinances, which my servant Moses commanded them. 9. So Manasseh caused Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to go astray, and to do evil works like the nations which the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. 10. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they would not hearken. 11. Therefore the Lord brought against them in the commanders of the army of the king of Assyria, who captured Manasseh alive, and bound him with chains, and carried him to Babylon. 12. But when he was in distress, he prayed before the Lord his God, and reverenced greatly the Lord God of his fathers. 13. And he prayed before the Lord, and he heard his voice and heard the prayer, and brought him back to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord was God. 14. Now after this he built an outer wall to the city of David on the west side of the brook of Gihon, on the entrance of the fish gate, and encircled the whole of Jerusalem with an outer wall, and raised it up a very great height. And he appointed commanders of the armies in all the fortified cities of Judah. 5:1-5. Josiah attacks idolatry. 15. And he took away the strange gods and the idols out of the house of the Lord, and all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of the Lord and in Jerusalem, and cast them out of the city. 16. And he built an altar to the Lord, and sacrificed upon it burnt offerings and peace offerings and thanks offerings, and commanded Judah to keep the feast of the Lord God of Israel. 17. And not to sacrifice again to strange gods, nor to offer burnt offerings to them, but before the Lord their God only. 18. Now the rest of the acts of Manasseh and his prayer to his God, and the words of the prophets who prophesied concerning him in the name of the Lord God of Israel, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. 19. His prayer also, and how the Lord heard his voice, and all his sins, and his iniquity, and the places on which he built altars and appointed priests, and the shrines he built for the idols, behold, they are written among the sayings of Hanan the prophet. 20. Now Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his own house, in the garden of the treasury, and Amon his son reigned in his stead. 21. And Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. 23. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, as Manasseh his father had done. For Amon sacrificed to all the images and idols which Manasseh his father had made, and worshipped them. 23. And he did not humble himself before the Lord his God, as Manasseh humbled himself before the Lord his God, but Amon committed sins more and more. 24. And his servants conspired against him and slew him in his own house. 25. But the people of the land slew all those who had conspired against King Amon, and the people of the land made Josiah his son king in his stead.